Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am.
Nino Brown Boxing, I'm back in the building. Shout out to the Wbc. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. So I may be a little late with this, but it's been something on my mind. It's relevant to my favorite division, the welterweight division, and I just wanted to speak on it. So I was watching an interview that Fight Hype had with Kenny Porter. The interview was posted on their YouTube page January 19th, so it was things like almost a week ago from now. But during the interview, they were like pretty much asking Kenny Porter a lot of the questions that I wanted answered regarding the whole Sean Porter, WBC, Danny Garcia, WBC title eliminator situation. And the interviewer from Fight Hype, so shout out to Fight Hype for the interview. The interviewer for Fight Hype was pretty much asking the questions about, what's your take on Keith Thurman potentially fighting Jesse Vargas. Kenny Porter was saying like, Keith Thurman, they got to go through us. We the mandatory. We fought our title eliminators. We fought Andre Berto. We fought Granados. And in order for Thurman to make a fight with somebody else, they got to come talk to us first. We got to approve it. And then the interviewer went on and said, well, it seems like the WBC is putting Danny Garcia and Brandon Rios in the title eliminator. And it seemed like the interviewer already knew what he wanted to say, but he kind of sugarcoated it a little bit for Kenny Porter. And Kenny Porter was on some, well, things are not always what they seem, and just because it appears to be that way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's that way. Now, the thing, unless I missed it in previous interviews, the question that I wanted the interviewer to ask Kenny Porter is, well, per WBC rules, first thing first, Keith Thurman, his mandatory hasn't been made because this tune-up fight, the WBC hasn't come out and said that Keith Thurman is getting some type of an extension or an exemption. So my thing is, they're allowing him to face whoever he wants to face when he comes back. It sounds like according to the rankings, Sean Porter is the number one contender, and per WBC rules, the WBC can mandate anyone in the top 5 or top 10, I believe, to be the mandatory for a WBC title in the division. And it seems like that's the whole part that the Porters they're tap dancing around the point that just because you're ranked number 1 doesn't mean you're the mandatory. You can become, the WBC can appoint the mandatory spot to the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, the number 5 guy. But it seems like the Porters aren't getting that. It seems like they're not speaking on that. No one's, they're not asking those questions. Now, another thing is, Kenny Porter, he was like, we fought Berto, we fought Granados, and my thing is like, does a Berto win and a Granados win lock you in to fight Keith Thurman, a unified champion in the division? Absolutely not. Like, I don't think those 2 wins are, I don't think it's enough, especially with Danny Garcia being the former WBC champion. If anything, it makes sense for Danny Garcia to fight Brandon Rios for an eliminator, and then you match up Porter and Garcia for a final eliminator, and then they have that winner face Keith Thurman. To me, that makes the most sense. And I think Kenny Porter is just blowing smoke and trying to beat around the bush of what the reality is. He says things aren't always what they seem when it comes to the whole Danny Garcia situation. But, Kenny, you can apply that same logic to Sean Porter. Just because they said that it was an eliminator for Sean and Berto, things weren't what they seemed at that point, and you had to fight Granados. So why is it such a shoo-in for things are exactly what it looks like when it comes to Porter, but when it comes to the former WBC champion Danny Garcia, things aren't what they seem? It's kind of some inconsistent BS to me, and I just feel like they, if someone's going to give the interview, they need to pretty much ask a very direct question, like, why do you feel that people have gone through multiple eliminators to get title shots, and then you have final eliminator bouts. Like, first thing first, why do you feel that fighting Andre Berto and Adrian Granados in a 10-round fight should put you in a spot to fight a unified champion? Like, that doesn't make sense, especially when you lost against the guy. It's not like it was a draw and there was no rematch clause and Thurman went on, did his own thing. And besides, Thurman even had a WBC belt at the time, just thinking about that. But it's just one of those things, like, to me, the Porters are delusional. I think people need to put more pressure on them about the whole Errol Spence situation. If you're going to ask about the WBC, I say ask about the IBF as well. Because if you pretty much put it out there and say, like, oh yeah, is it a possibility that the WBC can snub Sean Porter and select someone else to be Keith Thurman's mandatory? The question is, what's your Team Porter, like, what's your backup plan? You know, the chances of you getting a shot at the WBO title right now is very slim. And honestly, I don't even think they want parts of Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford was to beat Jeff Horn. I don't think they want parts of him right now. So my plan is, the way that I'm looking at it is like, okay, well, we understand that anything is possible in this, this whole business and game of boxing. And Kenny Porter, you said it yourself, things are not always what they see. Now, just because you're the man saying that things are not always what they see, that doesn't mean that you have the clearest vantage point of what's going on. Like, the Porters could just be a pawn in the WBC's game, and WBC can have the ultimate vantage point of what's going on in this whole title eliminator situation. Now, if Sean Porter is snubbed, what is he going to do? Like, is he going to stall out his career? Or is he going to go after the other champion in his division, that being Errol Spence, hit up the IBF and ask him to be ranked? Because that's exactly what Lamont Peterson did when, after Lamont Peterson captured that WBA regular title, he was no longer ranked by the IBF. That's why he had to vacate. So I just find it very interesting that the way the Porters are going about it, it seems like they're trying to change their tune when it comes to the whole situation. And I just find it extremely funny. I feel like the interview was great. It was very informative. I like the fact that Kenny Porter, the interviewer put Kenny Porter in a position where he could release a lot of the thoughts that was on his mind. But it's just certain questions still remain unanswered. Then I guess the next question is, like, what, Sean Porter, like, what's your ultimate goal? Like, is the goal to be undisputed? Is the goal to stall out your career? Is the goal to just make as much money as possible and ride off in the sunset? I think all of these questions needs to be asked and then challenge their responses. It's not, Sean Porter isn't the first career being observed by boxing fans. So this is not new to anyone. And if the goal is to be undisputed, why does it matter? If the goal is to be undisputed and waiting and sitting around and not being active, we all understand that's not a positive thing for any young fighter in their prime, to waste prime years just sitting around waiting for an opportunity. If we all understand that, then why not go after Errol Spence? If the goal is to be undisputed, if the goal is not to be undisputed, then honestly, like, what's the whole point? But I guess I would start it off with an indirect question, asking about, like, the heavyweight division, and see, like, okay, well, what do you think the guys at the heavyweight division's ultimate goal should be? Pretty much having the question in a way where it takes Kenny Porter saying, like, they should try to go out to undisputed, and then redirect the question to, well, if that's the case, why don't you all try to go out to undisputed, and so on and so on. Pretty much pushing the agenda of Sean Porter versus Errol Spence if the Keith Thurman fight doesn't come to fruition in 2018. And according to what Keith Thurman has said at the whole Showtime showcase, that's not what's going to happen. So I just thought it was, was an interesting interview. The Porters need to be a little bit more realistic. I mean, it's obvious. The WBC has it in writing on how they go about doing things. Is it exactly right? No. I don't feel like the number 1 guy should be skipped over and the number 4 guy should be appointed to mandatory, but that's just the way it is. They wanted to be ranked by the WBC. I'm assuming Sean Porter has lawyers, attorneys, management, and all of that stuff like that looks over those type of rules when it comes to these situations. Or maybe he don't. Maybe maybe they're just not informed, but I refuse to believe that the Porters are that ignorant to the WBC's rules. I believe, those are two intelligent brothers. So I'm just going to say the safe assumption is that they're very aware that just because you're ranked number 1, that doesn't mean you're the mandatory. And then how can you even come out your mouth and say, well, we are the mandatory, but after you beat Berto, you had to fight somebody else. So it really doesn't make sense. And we just have to see what happens, because you never know. Keith Thurman can get injured in his comeback fight, and then what happens after that? I mean, that's when extensions can start to be granted, and we can go from there. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully, if anybody got any extra feedback, just drop it in the comments section. Let me know what you think about it. Maybe your comments have inspired me to make a part 2 to this video. But until next time, this is Nino Brown Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. Don't forget to hit that like button. Oh yeah, boycott Keith Thurman until he fight Errol Spence. Peace.